Hi, I'm Steven Mueller, the owner of Vantage Realty Professionals out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So what's actually going on in the Charlotte, North Carolina real estate market in August 2025? And what should buyers and sellers know right now? One of the big things that buyers and sellers always like to know is if we're actually in a buyer's market or a seller's market right now. Frankly, right now, I don't think we're in either. I think right now we're in a pretty stable market. The good inventory is selling. It's selling relatively quickly and close to asking price. And then the inventory that maybe is overpriced or maybe isn't in the best condition, it may not sell at all. So we're really in a pretty stable market right now. We're at about 3 months inventory at the moment. Another thing people ask is how home values have changed over the past year. What we've seen a little bit of an increase in the property values here in the Charlotte area, but nothing crazy. You know, typically Charlotte's been a relatively consistent market as far as seeing some appreciation. We don't really see huge jumps and ebbs and flows like a lot of other areas do. So right now, again, pretty stable market, but we are seeing some appreciation here. So a lot of times we have questions about the inventory level, and it kind of goes into what I just said a couple minutes ago, is we're in a pretty stable market in terms of inventory. We have seen, if you compare July 2025 with July 2024, we've seen the inventory levels go up about 30%, which most people say, oh my gosh, there's a ton of inventory hitting the market and there's a lot more homes for sale. I actually think that's a good thing because we have a lot of people that move to and from Charlotte, and I was seeing a lot of buyers that wouldn't purchase because they couldn't find their next property they like. Now we're actually seeing pending sales go up as well as the inventory levels go up. So I think there's a direct correlation of more inventory, which with more pending sales. Another question I get a lot of times is, what are the higher end listings doing? Are they moving relatively quickly, or are they sitting on the market? And to be frank, it just depends on the house. It depends on the area. It depends on the condition of the house. It's basically the same thing in any price point on if a home's moving really quickly or if it's not. Something that I have found very interesting though is the price ranges between say $900,000 up to about $1.6 million. While that's a really, really good budget, there isn't a ton of really good inventory in the Charlotte area in that price range. And I found that really interesting lately to see. So I don't know why that's the case. I think part of that is because there are some folks who haven't quite needed to downsize yet, and then others who may not want to actually buy that next move up property yet. And that's because of a few different factors. Part of that I think is because interest rates are still a little bit high. And if you have a higher interest rate and a much higher mortgage, you're gonna see that payment be pretty high. So I think a lot of folks in that price range that I said earlier, 900 to 1.6, those folks are kind of sitting tight right now from what I can see. And I think a lot of that, it may change a little bit once we see the interest rates reduce a little bit. Affordability is always a question that we have whenever you're talking about any market. I get that a lot in Charlotte. So if you look at major metropolitan areas, we're still pretty affordable. When I looked at numbers recently in the Charlotte metro area, our average sale price is about $520,000, which is less than a lot of metropolitan areas. I will say it depends where you're coming from on how affordable you feel like Charlotte is or not. If you're coming from, say, Texas, what we see is a lot of times the prices are a little bit lower there, but if you're coming from New York or New Jersey or something like that, you might actually feel like it's a deal here. So the affordability and how you feel about it a lot of times depends on where you're coming from. Another thing that people like to ask is, nationally, what are we seeing? Are the markets shifting or not? Once again, it depends on the area. So from my understanding, like Florida, they have a lot more inventory right now, and there are multiple factors on why that's the case. We're not really seeing a shifting market here in Charlotte right now. I mean, again, we're pretty steady. It's going to be interesting how that plays into Charlotte. So if you're moving from, let's just say Florida, there's more inventory, homes are staying on the market longer. That may impact us if folks are moving here, but it's really difficult to say like how the rest of the country is going to impact Charlotte. I will say there are a ton of people moving to this area. We have a very, very strong economy, so I don't foresee us really taking a a dip because a lot of people are coming here for job relocations and stuff like that. Something to also be aware of is what local economic factors are impacting Charlotte. So we have a ton of corporate headquarters here, and actually I just heard of a couple more that are going to be coming in really soon. So we're already dealing with relatively low inventory. Now we're going to have a lot of people moving here. So I think that we could actually see our inventory levels drop just a little bit. And another thing that I want to throw out there is if we do see lower interest rates, I think a lot of buyers have been sitting on the fence. And I think as soon as we see a lower interest rate market, we're probably going to see a lot of those people decide to purchase. So I do think that, the local economic factors are going to impact us because we do have a very strong economy here in Charlotte. Something to be aware of is mortgage rates and how they're impacting buyer demand right now. So as I said a minute ago, I do think that there are people sitting on the sidelines right now that probably will buy once we see lower interest rates. I will also say that people have been buying in a higher interest rate market. A lot of that is because of the fact that people move to and from Charlotte all the time. And a lot of times what I always tell people is focus on your needs. If you're in a market that has a higher interest rate, but you need a house, or if you're in a market with a lower interest rate and you need a house, you still need a house. So I've found that a lot of people have purchased their home as long as they can afford it. And then if they need to refinance later, they can do that at that point. So what I believe the market's going to do moving into the fall of 2020-25 is, first of all, I don't have a crystal ball. I can tell you what I think's going to happen, so there's no guarantees. I think interest rates drop a little bit. I think people are going to come off the fence and they're probably going to start buying. I don't foresee a huge increase in inventory levels. I don't foresee property values decreasing here in the Charlotte area. I still see people are probably going to move here. So I really think it's going to be a pretty stable market. I think if anything's going to happen, we may actually see more buyers hit the market in the fall. One of the things I always say is in the summertime, for whatever reason in Charlotte, over 18 years of being in this business, the summertime has always been a little slower than the other times of year. Typically, we have good falls and winters. I don't know why that is, but typically it picks back up. So I expect as we get into September, get through Labor Day, we're going to see a pretty good pickup here in the Charlotte market. So I think it's going to be pretty steady. There are a lot of people out there who may be looking for that move up home, maybe a first-time home seller that needs to sell their home to buy their next one, or maybe they need to sell their home to go to a different market because of a job relocation. Something I always tell them is prep your home for sale. Number one, make sure you prep your home for sale. Go ahead. If it would bother you as a buyer, and it would bother, if you're seeing something in your home that will bother you as a buyer, go ahead and fix it up front. All right, don't let a buyer see that and then be bothered by it, because if they're bothered by it, that equals a lower sale price. Also, hire the right agent to help you out. Hopefully we're the right agent to help you out. And if we are, we can give you some advice and some direction on how to get the highest sale price you can and also sell the home within your timeline. Another thing sellers should know, whether you're a first-time home seller or not, is you need to know about price reductions, okay? They do happen sometimes, especially if you push the envelope on price. Now, our listings, we reduce the price maybe 10% of the time because we like to price things right on the money. If we can price it a little bit higher than what the market tells us the value is, then we will, and that's in an appreciating market. If it's a depreciating market, we may price it just a little bit under. It really just depends on the market and where we're headed. I still think we're going to see a little bit of appreciation here through the rest of the year, so I don't think we're going to have to see a ton of price reductions, but honestly, it really depends on how you price it up front. And I always suggest this to people. If you put your home on the market and it's not moving, you need to adjust the price relatively quickly. You do not want this home to sit and get stagnant on the market. Also, be aware that the price points that are moving the fastest in Charlotte right now are probably sub $1 million. It's tough to say exactly what price ranges, but if you look at something between $500,000 and $1 million, most dual income families in the Charlotte area can afford that and afford the monthly mortgage on that. So those homes are moving pretty quickly right now. Obviously, depends on the neighborhood, depends on the area, things like that, but that's where we're seeing the majority of the homes move pretty quickly. As always, I hope this information is helpful. If you need any help buying or selling a home, or maybe just even have questions that you need answered, we'd love to be the resource that you come to, and we can certainly, with no obligation, give you some direction.